welcome director of the Holdovers, Alexander Payne.
Good evening. Thanks for coming.
It's so nice to see a packed house, and it's so nice to have actors back as well. Alexander, I would like to start with you. I know that your journey into Holdovers was watching this 1930s French movie, this really unexpected thing that caught your eye, and then what was the journey like? What brought you to the Holdovers from that movie to this amazing movie?
You didn't have to lead with that I stole the premise. There was a nicer question to start with. But yes, about a dozen years ago, I saw a relatively unknown French film from 1935 that had a similar premise. It's Merluce by Marcel Pagnol. I walked out thinking, that's a good premise. I'd like to see even another version of that movie. And I didn't do anything with it, mostly because I knew it was going to take time to research it, because I'm not from that world, from New England boarding schools and stuff. But anyway, long story short, years later, I met David Hemmingson, who had written a pilot that took place in a boarding school. And I thought it was very well written and asked him to do something with this idea.
And Paul.
Yes.
And also Alexander. I want to ask to both of you. It's been almost 2 decades since Sideways, a film that we all love. It's so nice to see another Alexander Payne Paul Giamatti collaboration. So maybe a 2-part question. What took you guys so long to reunite? And what was it about Paul Hannum that spoke to you when you first got the script?
Why did it take so long, Alexander? Why?
I'm slow at screenplays.
That's true.
I don't have as many at-bats as I'd like to have.
That's true. I mean, it wasn't for lack of trying. We talked about doing stuff. We talked about, I keep saying this because I want to manifest it in reality.
Yes.
I want to do a private eye movie with you. Yes, all of us. And we talked about that. We talked about other things, but nothing ever worked out. And we tried to do this. Actually, a bunch of times, didn't we? I mean, it never worked out. Yes. Yes.
I mean, a bunch of times.
Like 2 or 3 times we tried to, two times at least. Yes. And it never worked out scheduling-wise. We would talk about it. I mean, this is what happens, folks. This is what it's like. It's like The Odd Couple. It's just constant bickering. But we tried, and it just didn't. It didn't really.
And what was it about Paul Hannum that spoke to you when this story was in pre-production, when you read the script?
When I encounter a character who smells like fish. My heart opens. No, exactly. It's like Olivier with Richard III. Right? It's a good one, right? It's a good one, right? Kind of everything. I mean, look, first of all, was the fact it was him. I would have done anything. I would have gotten him a soda and a bag of Doritos down at a convenience store and brought it to him. I would do anything he wanted me to do. So then the script came in, and it was this remarkably beautifully written script and beautiful story. And the character is wonderful. I mean, the way he talks, everything about him was wonderful. And yes, the condition of the eye and the funny things like that were very touching to me, actually. I thought this puts this guy, he's so outside the zone of acceptance for people. And it was very touching to me, but he's in this uptight place, and he's very much a man, company man of the place and stuff. There was so much about him, and I felt I did know this world pretty well. And that was a kind of gift for me. You know, it was something where just, I could just stew in this stuff, and all of these things were coming out that I hadn't thought about in years, and people I hadn't thought about in years, and situations and teachers, and all of this was just, it was an endless flow of it for me.
And Davine, I want to bring you in next. I love Mary Lamb so much. She is an inside and out beautiful character. And you brought her to life so touchingly, so beautifully. I'm wondering if you could talk about how you tapped into that headspace of deep love, but also deep grief, the ebb and flow of grief, the on and off again. We just see that in your performance, in your face, even in your silent moments. So tell us a little bit about tapping into that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was a real, I think it was Alexander and I like constantly towing this line of what is appropriate when it comes to emotion. And this line of maybe that's too much, maybe do a little less. And I find there's a sweet spot that then you as the actor are deeply connected to it, and that you or the viewer are leaning into it. Mm-hmm. And that took some time, I think, to figure out. I think one thing that really helped, it's interesting, I've never had an experience before where it's almost like I'm doing two movies in one, right? One of me doing the dialogue and all of that. And then there was this other interesting element that I've never done before, not to this level, of it was truly like being a silent movie actress and having pages of a moment that David wrote so beautifully. It's almost as if the script then changed into like a novel or a narrative of describing the area and what's all around. And it took a lot of trust, to be honest, in Alexander to be like, okay, I'm going to let you just capture me in this. And moments that I think of in particular that stand out are moments where I'm just, I don't know if it's all in here or not, but moments of me just being in my element of cooking. Mm-hmm. There's lots of times where I was like preparing things or collecting like the recipes, you know what I mean? Or a big one for me was being in my room, and I think it was like, we're gonna put together a puzzle and there's cigarettes. Let's figure it out, you know, and just feeling comfortable in that space. And so over time, the worlds kind of blended and the camera kind of disappeared. And I really then relied on Alexander's eyes to guide me. And I kind of just melted into the scenery, so to speak. And I used to always say a quick prayer because I was scared, I was nervous. Because it's very vulnerable. That I was like, not only is the cameraman and everyone else in this room gonna see this, but whoever chooses to watch this movie is going to experience some depths of my pain that I've personally experienced. But I think that's why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. Because I think it has to be something in which we're giving out so that you guys, the viewer, may feel something, learn something, recognize something, and then hopefully that then changes you when you guys leave out of here and you make a change, you know what I mean, off into where you go. At least for me, that's a huge reason why I do what I do. So when I read the script and saw how much of the grief and this place that this lady was in, it was important to me that I showed layers of it and that it wasn't just, I'm depressed, son died. That it had more colors in there. And I used the formula of like the stages of grief as like a guide or a marker. And then I just kind of tracked throughout where I wanted to show those different stages, but I wanted to show all those stages or as much of them as I possibly could so that if someone were to watch this and was going through something, everyone at whatever stage could connect. And it wasn't just, oh, well, she's stuck at anger and, you know what I mean, denial. That it was something that everyone could hopefully connect to.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, just real quick. Giamatti, I remember the very first conversation we had via Zoom, and you remarked that you liked in the screenplay that there, as much as it's about these three people coming together, you appreciated seeing each of them alone.
Yes.
You saw it in the screenplay.
Because we don't usually see that in cinema, where someone, and not like a quick beat or like an ironic thing, but I felt like even in reading it before we even got started, it was like, oh wow, the camera's really going. It almost made me think of like we're going through the halls, right? Imagine like almost being a ghost. I remember we talked about this, like being a ghost going through the halls of the academy, right? And that you kind of pass the door, and that's like Mary's, and you like, and you back up, and you just.
You emphasized that a lot, how we were alone there. You kept saying, don't forget the three of you are the only people here. You kept emphasizing that in a way that was really amazing.
And I think it helped then show the massiveness of that building, and how it is a completely different thing once all these people are
The
there.
shit is gone.
Yeah, but when it's gone, it somehow is this neutral ground that I think and hope you guys feel this sense of no way would this ever happen unless everything else was gone.
Sure.
Right? If it wasn't the winter, if it wasn't the holidays and all the stuff that the holidays give, but this sense of these three people are in this massive space on acres of land by themselves, and that this beautiful thing erupts.
And Dominic, it's hard to believe that this is your first performance.
Wow.
It's incredible. I guess maybe a two-part question. Let us tell us a little bit about how you first got involved with the Holdovers. I think there's a great story behind how you guys met. And what was your kind of entry point into Agnes Tully's headspace, his anger, his vulnerability, and all the things that are in between?
Yeah, well, starting out, I'll try to keep this part short, but I was at my school senior year at Deerfield Academy, and I got a call from our acting teacher there. Her name is Catriona Hines. She's a very lovely Scottish woman, and she told me that these casting people were coming to look for some kids for a movie, and Susan Shopmaker, our casting director, I guess, in that initial meeting saw something interesting about me for this character Angus, and passed that on to Alexander. And then maybe a few weeks later, Alexander came to Deerfield to meet me, and I mean that was just surreal. Like he was standing in my acting classroom where I'd had like hundreds of classes in there and rehearsed for shows and stuff, and this guy's walking around, so that was kind of cool. And yeah, then we had that initial audition, and I don't know, like nobody was convinced at that point. I wasn't even really convinced myself that I could do it, I don't think yet. So then it took, a couple more months of just hammering it out, and then kind of goes to like the second part of your question is I think just because for 2 months I was really like kind of in a way obsessing over this kid, like just trying to figure out, to be him, in a way, essentially live that in some sense, because that was the big part of my auditioning, and what Alexander was trying to get me to do was that, stop acting. And it's like, that sounds super vague and, not specific, but in a lot of ways, I guess that resonated with me. And I don't know, I guess blunt, simple directions kind of more useful, for me at least. And that helped me just kind of click and hit the ground running there.
Did you feel that the character you were playing was very different from you?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, obviously, like being back in 1970 is a different experience, but I didn't feel like I had more friends than this kid, I think.
That's right, you're popular.
I don't.
We love that.
I had a lot of friends at school. I would say I was not a controversial student. Everybody liked me. Because also, doing theater, Angus doesn't really strike me as the kid who's, going to get on stage and perform, And that was, he's a very closed kid. And I think my experience at school, I was very open and expressive in a lot of ways. So that was different. Ham.
And, I want to throw this next question to all three actors, and actually Alexander too. I love that this film is about essentially the families that we make for ourselves, the chosen family, the idea of that. And you're a pro now, but when you first came on board to this, you were a newbie. So maybe tell us a little bit about that, both on-screen and off-screen family dynamic. These characters were caring for Angus, and then maybe off-screen, Paul and Devine being experienced actors caring for you. How did that, reflect on each other on and off-screen?
Well, I don't know about pro. I would still consider myself a newbie. This was one experience, and obviously I learned a lot from it. But I am still, and I think at least the biggest thing I've learned from these two is the fact that every project they go into, they're kind of starting as a newbie in a sense. Like they're starting from that beginner's mindset. So, in my eyes, these are the pros, but my first experience from them is they're watching me, they're trying to pick up things for me. They're looking at me as a partner, someone that they're working with, not just, luggage to haul.
Excess baggage.
So oh God. That's the most pro thing I learned, I think, is to just be a beginner always.
And Paul and Devine, I would love to hear from you as well, working with Dominic as experienced actors, working with a first-timer. What was that like for you?
It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was lovely. It mimicked in some ways what was going on in the script, I didn't like him at first, and then I came to I was in love with him from the get-go. I saw his audition tape, and I was like, are you kidding me? This kid is unbelievable. Look at that face. I was like, I can't stop looking at him and listening to him. He was amazing. Amazing. And everything about him, I was like, he looks like he's from the 70s, too. No, he was... I keep saying there was a thing about you that was so wonderful, because there's a way in which I've been at this a long time, and I can get a little bit sort of like, not stuck in a groove or something, but I can be very kind of like, ba-boom, 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 and something about his freshness, but his thoughtfulness and his gentleness and his, just who he is, made me slow down and stop and just appreciate again. So, some of that beginner mind thing is because of you, man.
Thanks, man.
No, seriously.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Some of it was because of him. You know what I mean? That it was like, I felt that unbelievable sense of discovery and like newness and just thoughtfulness about it that was really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it was also just, I don't know, it just wasn't, it wasn't stressful at all. We kind of just, we talked about some things beforehand and did some read-throughs and but we were kind of, for the most part, able to just figure it out and do it.
That's also a credit to Alexander. Creates a sort of atmosphere that feels like a family. It feels very intimate and kind. Oh God, what happened? Was that you? Oh, Jesus Christ. Wow. That happens in the set too. The place itself feels very safe and very kind and very gentle and not a big deal. We happen to be making a movie. And we're hanging out and we happen to be making a movie.
And we really like each other.
We like each other. Yeah.
This is real.
Thank you.
Y'all know.
Yeah. We all
Could be different.
Yeah, it could be a lot different.
But we actually really like each other. No, but also he has I think he's an old soul. I think there's something about Dominic that he's been here before. So even, it never felt like, oh, let's think of things to talk to him about. Do you like Taylor Swift? No, it was like, he was there.
That's a good point.
No, truly. Sometimes I'm like, and what about those One Direction? Whatever. But no, he has an old soul, and there's such a maturity and a groundedness about him.
He's interested in the world in a really interesting way. We're going to keep talking about you like you're not.
You're doing a good job. You did a good job.
I'll take it.
And Alexander, one of the things I love about the Holdovers is that not only the film is set in the 70s, but it actually looks like it was shot in the 70s. And, a lot of the grain, the quality from production design to costumes to cinematography. So tell us a little bit about your intentions behind that. Making the film so authentically of period.
I think the key was that I told my collaborators and myself, we're not making a period film. We're making a contemporary film, pretending we're in 1970. And especially with, I mean, in a way, the easy part was the period lenses and throwing the grain on afterwards, in like in the DI and post. All those products are pretty good right now. But as you say correctly, it was the production design and the costume design and the selection of extras. You know, to find 150 kids with the right hair for the dining hall scene at the beginning. You know, that kind of long, protracted credit sequence is meant to set the stage and kind of show you that world before we, you know, tell the story. Yeah, I often have distaste for many contemporary period TV shows and films because the production design tends to be a little bit too screeching. It's just too loud. Like, look at all of these period things. I wanted it to feel very lived in and banal. As though we were just making a low-budget film back then.
And you have a beautiful soundtrack to go with that authenticity as well.
Thank you. Yeah, put a lot of work into the music selection.
And I want to ask the actors next, that kind of authenticity, the period authenticity with the costumes and production design and shooting on location, I'm wondering what does that to your performance, your engagement of the period and character?
That's
a great question.
This is important.
It bolsters it. It's like another scene partner there with you. It authenticates your character. To imagine if you open up a drawer and it's filled with stuff you didn't even ask for, or clothing is accurate. It's just, it puts you in like a high, ultra sensory, you know what I mean? Like environment.
It feeds you constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. And also, we're in Massachusetts to start with. And you get all of that you need. Then we're in these actual schools, and we're in these real environments, and then they bring in all this stuff. They bring in all this amazing stuff, these props, and then you get their coat. You know, I was very specific about the coat, because the feel of that was the 70s to me. That kind of duffel coat, bad topper button duffel coat. That's the 70s to me, you know, and it's like, it feels like, it gives you everything. It gives you everything, constantly.
I just want to say there's that whole discussion of, creating a character from the inside out or the outside in. Well, production design is there to extend the sense of outside in.
Right.
So it's not just the actor, oh, my hair, but like everything around you is there to help you be that character.
But I also think when certain things are in agreement with what you're saying, when those details are hammered out, like, I don't know if you remember this, Alexander, but we shot this top of January. So we were getting things together right about now. And we were on Zooms and stuff like that. And I remember we had a meeting about Mary Lamb, and we were talking about her hair. So I'm home at my parents' house, you know, my hair's out, I'm being me. And Alexander goes, is that gray hair right there? And I'm like, ooh. He goes, no, I love it. Mary has a gray streak right there. And he was like, there is Curtis. But the fact of you saying, there is Curtis, I held on to that throughout the entire movie. That whenever I had to have some of those moments when I'm sitting by myself, I'd be like, your gray hair, this Curtis. Do you know what I mean? It was, none of that goes for naught. Do you know what I mean? A lot of times you gotta fight for that. Or a lot of times the director is like, cut it out. Like, come on, it's too much. So I thank you for creating an environment and hiring people outside of the actors where everyone was on board at that level, because I honestly thought when it happens, big time, whatever that means for me, if that happens, then and only then will I get that opportunity, and I need to write that in my contract. Do you know what I mean? Type of thing. I didn't think truly that we would be able to have those kind of details, and you just set that as a baseline standard.
You have to fight for that usually.
You do,
yeah, you
truly.
Do. Yeah.
And I think we have time for one more question, and the last question maybe to the actors and Alexander too. We were talking about authenticity and how lived in the film feels, and your performances have that lived in comfort as well. I'm wondering what went into that off-screen to build the camaraderie among the three of you, and what are you taking away from this movie after having worked on it? Becoming the Holdovers family? Maybe we can start with Paul.
Like I say, the whole thing feels already very familial, you know? I mean, it's what it comes from the top down. You know, you have somebody who's already coming into it in a way that, you know, intimacy is his thing, connection is his thing.
And
what
you and I
have
the connection.
We have the connection already, and that's nice and everything, but it spreads out. You know, the whole thing is about connecting. I mean, the movie's about connecting.
I don't know if you guys know, sorry to cut you off. I don't know if you guys know, the camera's here, he's right here.
He doesn't use a monitor, which is
doesn't use a monitor, no video village. The camera is here,
it creates
he's right here.
Yeah, no, and that's why when you're talking about the silent movie thing, when you're alone in the room, you're not entirely alone because he's there with you. And he will talk to you while you're doing stuff. He will say things to you while you're doing stuff. And he will chat with you and talk with you. That doesn't happen.
Never.
And it's like that kind of sense of connection. It creates, the absence of a monitor doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's huge. Because it creates one place where everybody's working on the same thing. There's no hierarchy, there's none of that bullshit. None of it. No hierarchy. Everybody's in the same page, everybody's in the same place, everybody's working together. And it's so rare. You have no idea how rare it is.
I actually don't know.
You don't. And I remember
if I were to ask,
when I worked outside,
crazy.
they would say you're nuts not to
If I was
use
like,
one.
hey, listen, no video village, they'd be like, go F yourself. Are you kidding me?
No, they would
The
say
lead
you're
actress
nuts.
needs the camera. What are you talking
And
about?
when we did Sideways, I walked on set and I said, "Where the fuck's Video Village?" And you said, "Oh, I don't have one." I said, "You don't use a monitor?" He said, "No." I said, "Why not?" You said, "I've never used a monitor, and I don't intend to
Because
use
you're
a monitor."
watching it.
But you're watching.
It's through
So
your eyes.
right from there, it starts with that. There's a human eye on the whole thing. And then, you know, you give us the opportunity to hang out. We have 2 weeks to hang out, which is rare. It doesn't happen, you know? And it's like, and he and I are sitting around, well, making meals for each other and shit like that. I mean,
Yeah, it's stuff like that. And I think interestingly, like, and curious, you know, you were at a boarding school as well, but it was really important for me, those teachers that I had growing up and like those relationships I had with them, and I knew kind of what that looked like and what that would take to, you know, create a relationship with a teacher. So I kind of just treated it the same way, because I had really, really close personal relationships, especially with my acting teachers from high school, that I just kind of tried to simulate that in a way, just kind of treat you like a teacher in some sense.
Sure.
You did it perfect.
But he puts the right people together. He hires the right people and then lets them do their job. And then lets them all have a good time together.
And also with Alexander, like, this being my first time ever doing it, and like you're saying, I don't know, but when there's monitors and stuff, you can see, you know, what you've done, like in a take and things, but I had so much trust in him just because he was 3 feet away from me looking at me with his eyes, you know?
Exactly.
So
That's
he was
right.
like,
No, that is what it does.
you know,
Huge.
Because a monitor can sometimes take away the director.
Totally.
We're like, yeah, okay, let me see how I'm looking. Okay, I feel good about this, and now we can continue.
It separates things. It's not good.
It puts back the relationship with actor and
Distances
director.
things, yeah.
I think I speak for everybody that this family became now our permanent family. We will turn to this movie for years to come, every holiday season, that we will have to
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.